It's been seen as a major diplomatic and economic breakthrough. This as US President Donald Trump has announced that the United States and India have finalized a landmark trade agreement. It's going to be marked by a significant reduction in reciprocal tariffs. The deal, remember, was preceded by a high-stakes phone call between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. And in this interaction, which was teased earlier in the day by the newly appointed US Ambassador to India, Ambassador Sergio Gore. In fact, CNBC sources have revealed to us that both sides are now likely to move forward with documentation this week. The deal is likely to be formally announced in the coming days. And speaking exclusively with CNN News 18, Ambassador Gore has said that the credit goes to President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. The two leaders have a great personal relationship, which is something that carries this deal forward. The potential between India and the United States is limitless. Remember, the tariffs, which were up to 50%, have now been brought down to 18%, and that is the big breakthrough for India at the moment. Let's also listen in to this big exclusive conversation that CNN News 18 had with the US Ambassador, Ambassador Sergio Gore. Remember, we are the only channel to have had that phone conversation with the US Ambassador. Let's listen in to the conversation he had with Zaka Jacob.
Ambassador Gore, many congratulations. India and the US now have a trade deal. Can you give us a little more details on how this was achieved and how this was arrived at?
Yes, thank you for having me on tonight. Look, all the credit goes to President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Since I arrived in India about a month ago, I have said, and I truly mean it, that the two leaders have a great personal relationship. And that is something that carried this deal forward. The potential between India and the United States is limitless. And so I'm thrilled that India is getting this 18%, which is a massive drop from the previous number. We have incredible deals ahead. And so, as I've said, since I've arrived here, the best is yet to come.
So, Ambassador, if you could clarify for our viewers, India was paying 25% reciprocal tariffs and 25% Russian oil tariffs. The second set of Russian oil tariffs are now removed, so India just pays 18% tariffs. Is that the final rate?
That is correct. As you saw in the truth that the president wrote, part of the agreement is that all nations around the world stop buying oil from Russia in order to bring peace to the situation. And I know the Prime Minister deeply cares about bringing peace in that conflict, as does President Trump. So the number, as it gets finalized, will be that 18%.
What about on the question of the other assurances which President Trump has mentioned in his post that the Indian Prime Minister reportedly made to him? Could you walk us through that, please?
I will leave that to the trade negotiators. As you know, ambassadors don't necessarily have in their portfolio the trade deal. But overall, this is incredible news. 18%. There's a lot of demand. When the United States is open for business under President Trump, it's a new era. And frankly, from the start, we've said the president has a great relationship with the prime minister. A lot of people did not believe that. He truly does have a great relationship with the prime minister. And this is why this happened. Under President Trump's leadership, we have renegotiated deals all over the world. So this was not anything specific to one country or another. However, I will say that this trade deal is more favorable because of their relationship.
US tariffs on Indian exports now slashed down to a third in this dramatic announcement that we've had from President Trump. Down, that is, from 50% to 18%, which is to say that reciprocal tariffs down from 25 to 18. The 25% that had been added on for buying oil from Russia is now dropped altogether. Just the kind of announcement on the US tariffs that India has been waiting for and that Indian officials have been working towards over a period of several months now. But the announcement is not without some ifs and buts. We do await further details, and unsurprisingly, we have few. In Trump's post, he is a man for the broad brush, not for the fine print. As Trump put it, or posted it, India will in return take several steps. One, according to Trump, Prime Minister Modi had agreed to stop buying Russian oil, and this, he said, will help end the war, that expression coming in all caps. That is to stop buying Russian oil, not reduce, as Trump put it. He also said that India had agreed to reduce tariff and non-tariff barriers against the US to zero. That zero too coming in all caps. Could it be as sweeping as that? And further, that India had agreed to buy $500 billion worth of US energy, technology, coal, agricultural goods too. So what all to be bought at what price? We do await a more granular picture.
All right, so here's the deal. And what is the deal all about? You're looking at a time when India is competing as a manufacturing hub with other South Asian neighbors, particularly when it comes to, say, Bangladesh, even Indonesia, Vietnam, China. All of these countries are currently competing with India in terms of textile manufacturing. So how is India now going to be placed in tariffs? Let's break it down for you. The revised India-US tariff, in fact, compared to earlier, which was in fact coming on to 50%, has now been slashed down to 18%. To give you a breakup, 25% was reciprocal tariff, plus another additional 25% was for India's purchases of Russian crude oil, which India is now going to bring down to a flat zero. And henceforth, as far as only the reciprocal tariffs, which India was left with, a 25% in total, has been brought down to this 18%, as you can see. And this is the big breakthrough. So why India-US trade deal is going to matter for our economy? Well, to begin with, it makes India's key exports to US. You're looking at competitive exports like pharma, textiles, gems to become more affordable, even though so far the United States has maintained that pharma will be exempted. But it is also going to boost Indian markets. You're also looking at a shift from Russian oil, which is going to also reduce dependency risks. Why so? Because that is exactly why tariffs had been imposed on India. How the US and Venezuela are able to meet India's need is a key challenge which remains, but it's also the lowest tariff in South Asia, which is also going to reset the diplomatic ties between India and the United States. This amid growing irritants, especially which had crept into this relationship after the United States sort of started warming up to Pakistan. Will this come with its own set of leverage for India? Let's try and weigh in, and for that I'm joined in by Ambassador Achal Malhotra, who's a former diplomat, also joined in by Dr. Satoru Nagao, who's a fellow at the Hudson Institute. Many thanks to you both for joining in. Dr. Satoru Nagao, if I could quickly bring you in, do you just a week ago I was covering the India-EU FTA. And a week on, we are seeing this good news that's come in. Do you think that that FTA, which sort of opened up New Delhi's gateway to a 27 member trading bloc, has also given us some kind of leverage and changed the way Washington is looking at trade with New Delhi?
Indeed, this agreement between India and the US and India and the EU will open the big gate to rehabilitation of the relationship. Because last 1 year, the India-US relation faced a very difficulty and uncertain time. So India and the US trade is, for India, this trade with the United States is #1 level. But now this is not true, because that last 1 year it has changed. And the company who export, Indian company who exports products to the United States cannot hire many Indian workers in India, and that is a big problem. So shrinking the industry is happening. But now, based on this agreement, these companies revitalize their power,
Right.
And so relation is under the process of the rehabilitation, I think.
All right, Ambassador Malhotra, your quick thoughts on the way India is now going to be placed. We are looking at the lowest tariff rate in terms of South Asian countries, many of which are our own competitors when it comes to, say, manufacturing of textile. You're looking at Bangladesh has a higher tariff, Pakistan has a higher tariff, Vietnam, Indonesia, China, they all have higher tariffs. India is placed lower. How do you see this announcement at the moment?
Well, good morning. First of all, this is a very good breakthrough. And let me add by saying that this is not just a trade deal, it's not a trade and commerce. This is a big political statement. After all, for the last 1 year almost, the differences over the political differences were reflected in this trade deal and this punitive tariff and enhanced tariff. They had sort of created a certain kind of dent in the comprehensive strategic partnership which we have built with the United States of America over 2 decades. So first and foremost, this will have the impact, a good effect of ironing out the this kind of a differences that had crept in. And obviously, this trade deal will have its own benefits. The It will smoothen the trade, and as you have also mentioned, that the tariff that we are going to have is the lowest in South Asia. It will open up avenues for our labor-intensive industries in particular, such as textile and gems and jewelry, leather, and many more things. But for that, we have to wait and wait for the details because
Yes.
we have to see where, if any, compromises or concessions the two sides have agreed to give to each other. Of course, the second part is full of question marks. Second part of President Donald Trump's tweet on the social. This is full of question marks.
True.
Like he's saying that India has agreed to stop buying oil from Russia, and India has agreed to buy more oil from Venezuela and America. Well, as far as buying from America and Venezuela, we have no problems because we have been diversifying our sources of, procurement.
But
And our policy,
can they meet our need? And especially if you
no,
look at the
point is,
Venezuelan oil
yeah,
industry is extremely dilapidated at the moment. And Ambassador, we can't,
yes.
we ought to also remember the fact that it will take years for that industry to be resurrected at the moment. From 3 billion barrels per day up until the 1990s, they are currently only standing at a production of 800,000, which is minuscule. So those are details and concerns which India will have to address. But stay with me, gentlemen. Let me also break down for our viewers how this deal is going to impact Indian sectors. You're looking at resurrecting, or say rather gains for sectors like textiles and apparels. They, remember, had borne the brunt of Donald Trump's tariffs, especially if you look at industries like leather, gems, jewelry, even textiles. Price sensitive and labor intensive sectors, which is what they are going to benefit from the lowering of these tariffs than, say, key hubs like Bangladesh, Vietnam. India happens to be competing, in fact, with these manufacturing hubs like Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and even primarily China. Engineering goods respite, there's going to be greater respite, say, for exporters of auto components also. You're looking at electrical equipment as well, which India is now going to lower tariffs on, especially when it comes to our own imports, because we're also looking towards, say, critical minerals and creating our own lithium battery only so that we can compete with China. And so in the budget that's just been announced on Sunday, that tariff barrier is going to be removed, especially when it comes to capital equipment as well. Most of these sectors were hit hard by the tariffs earlier. Now the tariffs have been lowered. And so as far as East Asian competitors like the countries I just mentioned, especially when it comes to gems and jewelry, high value and highly competitive sectors like high tariffs impact, or there's going to be one on retail pricing, where the margins are now going to significantly improve for New Delhi with the lowering of these tariffs. On that note, let's also play out that conversation that CNN News 18's Zaka Jacob had with the US Ambassador to India, Ambassador Sergio Gore. We are the only channel which has had that conversation with him soon after he made that announcement about that phone call between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Listen in.
Ambassador Gore, many congratulations. India and the US now have a trade deal. Can you give us a little more details on how this was achieved and how this was arrived at?
Yes, thank you for having me on tonight. Look, all the credit goes to President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Since I arrived in India about a month ago, I have said, and I truly mean it, that the two leaders have a great personal relationship. And that is something that carried this deal forward. The potential between India and the United States is limitless. And so I'm thrilled that India is getting this 18%, which is a massive drop from the previous number. We have incredible deals ahead. And so, as I've said, since I've arrived here, the best is yet to come.
So, Ambassador, if you could clarify for our viewers, India was paying 25% reciprocal tariffs and 25% Russian oil tariffs. The second set of Russian oil tariffs are now removed, so India just pays 18% tariffs. Is that the final rate?
That is correct. As you saw in the truth that the president wrote, part of the agreement is that all nations around the world stop buying oil from Russia in order to bring peace to the situation. And I know the Prime Minister deeply cares about bringing peace in that conflict, as does President Trump. So the number, as it gets finalized, will be that 18%.
What about on the question of the other assurances which President Trump has mentioned in his post that the Indian Prime Minister reportedly made to him? Could you walk us through that, please?
I will leave that to the trade negotiators. As you know, ambassadors don't necessarily have in their portfolio the trade deal. But overall, this is incredible news. 18%. There's a lot of demand. When the United States is open for business under President Trump, it's a new era. And frankly, from the start, we've said the president has a great relationship with the prime minister. A lot of people did not believe that. He truly does have a great relationship with the prime minister. And this is why this happened. Under President Trump's leadership, we have renegotiated deals all over the world. So this was not anything specific to one country or another. However, I will say that this trade deal is more favorable because of their relationship.
All right, so it is going to be a mutually beneficial trade agreement, which, remember, is to be formally notified yet. But let's take this forward with our guests to continue to stay with us. Ambassador Malhotra, if I could come to you on the concerns at the moment, since we've all spoken about how the nitty-gritties are yet to be hammered out. The US president has not really mentioned that when he says there's going to be an additional purchase over the $500 billion worth of Indian purchase, India is going to buy greater American products, whether it is in the sectors of, say, energy, technology. What are going to be India's concerns? He's also mentioned agriculture. Remember, when it came to the EU FTA, India managed to steer clear or have EU steer clear of this sector. So what should be India's concerns now that there are going to be more rounds of negotiations, which is amply evident?
Well, what appears from his statement is that the deal is already ready. And we had also been getting the similar indicators that the deal is ready, but it's for one reason or the other.
Right.
And it was
So I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. They have come upon a mutually beneficial agreement. There's been a lowering of tariffs, which is the big breakthrough. But the US-India Chamber of Commerce has come up with that statement saying that this is a welcome step. And we do look forward to another round of negotiation before a deal is formally announced and that agreement is hammered out.
Well, that's a bit surprising because if it has still to be negotiated, then what is the point in making so big statements from both sides? I think even our own president, our own prime minister has also tweeted. So if they have agreed, so one possibility is they have agreed to bring down the tariffs to 18%
True.
from 50% and left it for the trade officials to further discuss the nitty-gritties. Or the other thing is the trade deal is ready. In fact, one of their very senior officials a couple of weeks ago had made this kind of a statement that the deal is ready, but it has not, and it was awaiting President Trump's approval, but it could not be signed because Prime Minister Modi did not make a phone call,
Okay,
and he was waiting.
are we saying
So,
that all of it was hinging on India's commitment to stop buying Russian oil? And now that India has made that commitment, what does India get in return? Will India's concerns
no,
when
I,
it comes to MSMEs or say our own agricultural sector, will that be taken care of?
no, I'm sure. Let's bifurcate into two segments. One is purely trade. If it is a trade deal, like we have done with the EU, we have done with many other countries, we have done it with UK, Oman, in the
Yes.
recent New Zealand. If it is a pure, I mean, one way is to look at it as a pure trade deal. But the other part is linked to us, what we have claimed, strategic autonomy. You know, President Trump has made a very tall claim by saying that our prime minister has agreed to stop buying oil from Russia.
Yes.
So that's something, it's very difficult to digest.
Yes.
He's not being a good diplomat. He's actually addressing his own domestic constituency, where he says that, look, I have finally been able to persuade India to stop buying oil from Russia and thereby stop contributing to the war economy, to the war, the war efforts of Russia. So this will help stop the war. Secondly, he's trying to, save $500 billion American goods and all that. Yes, we at some point of time were talking about $500 billion trade over a period of time. So those nitty-gritties will have to be seen. So
And
look at
with
it.
that question of strategic autonomy is very key, something that you've rightly touched upon, because remember, we're in the middle of a parliament session also, and it's giving a lot of fodder to the opposition to pose their own set of questions. So going to request you, gentlemen, continue staying with me because we are getting in more breaking inputs